Only 1 day away from the NFL draft now. Been leading into it all April, and I've been so excited to get here to the NFL draft and see what the Colts are going to do with the 26th pick this year. It's been exciting. Ballard has met with the media this week, and I'm going to talk about what he said a little bit coming into the draft. As well, some other news came out surrounding the Colts schedule. We now know when and where the Colts will play their opponents this year. So I'll break down the schedule a little bit and give my final 5 top picks there that will maybe be there at 26 to break it down a little bit. But that's what I wanted to talk about today. The schedule came out about mid last week. I talked about it a little bit. Talked about the Los Angeles Chargers first game that the Colts will have on the road. They have their first 2 games of the season this year, Los Angeles Chargers, and then at the Tennessee Titans. So the first time since 2004, the Colts will have 2 road games to start the year. But I don't think that Colts fans and the Colts should look at that with any pause as you look at those 2 teams and you really think that you can go out there and get both of those. I think starting out the year, you know, you're learning from your mistakes from last year, 2018, when you started out 1-5, and come in and start out hot and get off to a 2-0 start here, and on the road. I think that would set a statement, and not only the division but the AFC, that the Colts are a force to be reckoned with. You take off two teams there in the AFC that you're competing with. Obviously, Tennessee directly in the division, but Los Angeles Chargers, a playoff team that you could certainly be facing come mid January. So I really look at those 2 games. I mean, a tough start, I think, especially with the Chargers. You're going into their stadium where they don't really have the biggest fan base after moving to LA from San Diego, and having to kind of fight with the Rams with your fan population there. So I don't think it's going to be too hard of a challenge to come in. I mean, Philip Rivers is getting older, and they still have a good team down there, and especially a young defense. So it'll be a great challenge there for the Colts, as a couple of years ago when they started out going to LA to face the Los Angeles Rams and just got murdered in Jared Goff's first year. So hopefully that's not the case here starting out this season, so the Colts can come out and start coming out swinging. You look a little bit further down the list, and you have week 3 and 4, you have the Falcons and the Raiders coming to Lucas Oil. And I think that those are very 2 winnable games. I think you look at the Falcons at face value and see Matt Ryan and Julio Jones and Devontae Freeman, and this high powered offense, but that team is really coming down from their Super Bowl swing there. And Julio Jones is obviously still one of the better receivers in the league, but that team, I think, coming the first game at Lucas Oil, I think last year, you left a bad taste in the mouth losing to the Bengals in the home opener. So I think that the Colts are really going to come out here in the 3rd week and get the win against the Falcons there. And the Raiders, they're just too up and down for me. We'll see what they do here in the draft here come Thursday, but that's another one that you look at, and at face value, I think that you can chalk off a win. So your first 4 games there, I think you could easily start out 4-0. You might drop the season opener to the Chargers. The Colts really haven't had a whole lot of success with the season openers in recent history. We'll see how that changes this year, and if Frank Reich will instill his team with the importance of that game, as I know that he will. And week 5 at Kansas City right before your bye week, and that's the game that you have circled on the calendar. That's going to be the rematch, at Kansas City again, and you're going to have to go into that tough road environment and see if you can get it done. And I think, granted, what's going to happen here in the next week or so, but you look at what Kansas City has done. They just added that pass rusher from Seattle, who they just gave it seems like their entire bank for. I think it was $103 million contract with $65 million guaranteed. You gave up a first round pick and future second and third round picks, I believe, for this guy. So I don't know if they think that, once they've moved on from Ford and Houston, that if that's going to be their new answer there at defense. But you look at that defense, and wasn't a great defense to start the year, and now is kind of depleted in a way. So I think the Colts match up really well against the Chiefs. I think the Chiefs have a really nice offense there. You lost it with Kareem Hunt, obviously, a little bit, but the Colts didn't play Kareem Hunt in the playoffs either. So it's going to be interesting. I think that Mahomes is going to take a step back this year. I really don't think he's going to have the type of season that he had last year. Everyone's got a year of tape on him. I think that people are, he's been labeled a lot a generational talent, and I think that he deserves a lot of praise. But I'm still gonna kind of pump the brakes a little bit until we see what he does in his sophomore season. So through the bye week, the first 5 weeks, I think the most you come out of there with is two losses. And last season, starting 1-5, and look at where they came, looking at that, and even with two losses there to your first 5 weeks, and that's kind of more of a pessimistic approach in my opinion. I think that they could easily come out 4-1, or even start the year 5-0. I believe in them that much. So looking at, the 6 week, you have your bye. I think that's really early. I think the only positive thing that you can kind of take from it is that it's in between two important games. Obviously, you're Kansas City in week 5. So then you'll go into the bye week, have a fresh start, and then have the Texans at home, which will be a big game as well. So you look at that, and that's about the only thing you can take away about it. I mean, I don't like the bye that early. I think that, and in my opinion, having around week 10 is about perfect, kind of in the latter part of the season when you have some guys that are nicked up and stuff, and they need, a week of recovery and then to come back and play. So having it that early can be a little frightening as you look towards the latter part of the season, and you won't have that break. You'll have like a mini bye week in between your Thursday night game and then the following Sunday game, which will be week 12, week 13. So you'll have that, but a long road without a bye week with starting off the first 5 games, some and tough 5 games. And I mean, looking at this schedule, for the rest of the time, the Colts will have some easy home games. I think that's one of the things that jumps off to me, and that's why the Colts won't have any primetime games at Lucas Oil this year. Because you look at it, and aside from the Texans in week 7, there's really no primetime, teams. What is it going to be? The Panthers, the Falcons, the Broncos. Those are the best teams that the Colts are going to play at home, aside from divisional opponents. So I understand why they really don't have one at home. I really wish that they would. Obviously, they didn't have them last year, so you have a little bit more this year. You have some 4 o'clock games at home, which is kind of interesting. So I look at that, and the 4 games that I have circled here are the Chargers, the Chiefs, Pittsburgh, week 9, and the Saints in week 15. All 4 of those games are on the road. So a very tough road schedule here for the Colts. You look at it, and they're going to play some of the harder teams in the league and some playoff teams. So I think that looking at the Colts, and if they get past some of these teams, then that's when you can give the identity to who they are. Because last season they did kind of have an easier road, especially in the latter part of the season when they got so hot. They did beat some playoff teams in that time, but at the same time, it is going to be interesting to see what they're going to do when they go and play the New Orleans, at the Superdome, and how they're going to respond to that. I think that's one that they could easily drop. When you're looking at how the Colts are going to come out this season, I think that a road environment that hostile, they didn't do very well against the Chiefs, and we'll see. We'll know a little bit more, obviously, about who the Colts are by Week 15, by the Saints time. But to me, I think that that's one of the games that you could drop. But looking at an early prediction for the Colts, I think that they could easily. Granted, what happens next week, we'll know more about each team in the league and about what they are as a team at that point. We've already gone through the first, big stage of free agency. And now, we're going to get through the draft, and that'll show you, at face value what a team is. So I think that the Colts could easily go 12-4, 11-5. You have some tough games there on the road that are going to really see what the Colts are really made of. I think that, fighting for home field on the playoffs is going to be one of the big things that, Colts fans really need to be looking into this year. As, last year there was just fighting for a playoff spot. Well, I think that come January, when you're playing on your home field and indoor stadium, where you're familiar, that's going to be the best way for the Colts to get to the Super Bowl, I think. So I think going 12-4, that's really more your goal, because I think that 11-5, you have some really good teams in the AFC that, your Patriots are still good. They have kind of an easier schedule looking at what they have this year. You have your Kansas City, where you don't really know where they're going to go, if they're going to take that next step up. You have the Colts, who obviously are going to really try to make a run here. And, kind of a cluster of teams that were there kind of last year on the playoff bubble. The Browns have made the rise. The Steelers, I really think they're going to have a year, probably where they're going to beat the Browns in the division and kind of shock everybody. But you don't really know. And that's kind of the part where I'm at right now, where I don't really want to give a definite position, because we don't really know exactly what a team is yet without the draft being done. So I think I can come out here and say 12-4, 11-5, somewhere in there. You went 10-6 last season after starting 1-5, and in basically your your rebuilding year. So I think that they take a step up this year, and they're moving in the right direction, obviously. And granted, what happens here at the draft, I think that'll determine some things, and when you're looking around the league. But I have great confidence in Ballard, and I think that he's gonna have a home run here come draft day. So looking at what Ballard said this week, he had some numbers he threw out. He's not going to say a whole lot leading into the draft. I mean, there's not a whole lot he can say. Other teams are listening, and if he comes out and says something crazy about potentially what they're going to pick, then then teams are going to know, and they're going to do their due diligence. So he's not going to say a whole lot. He didn't really say a whole lot. He kind of threw out some numbers a little bit. He said that he and his team have watched about 1,700 hours of film on scouting for the NFL draft since their scouting began, which I believe was October, I think, which is just unbelievable. I mean, that's a lot of time dedicated to the draft. And it shows you how much that Ballard and his team thinks that this is important. I mean, they've got 160 to 180 guys narrowed down on their draft board, and they're not going to, deviate from that very much. They have their list of guys, and they've done their homework, and I believe, the 160, 180 guys, they fit as character guys. They believe they are players that Ballard thinks could come in and be fits with the Colts. That's a lot of guys, and obviously they're not going to get 160, 180 guys. They only have 9 picks, but you want to have all possibilities there for you. Depending on what happens on draft day, and that's what makes draft day great. Is no matter how many mock drafts you do, no matter how much outside research you do, and you don't know what a general manager on an NFL team is thinking. And things happen every single year that shock people, and people fall, and people are picked earlier than expected. And it's a crazy time. So I think that looking at it, at what Ballard has said, and looking at some more things, he says that there are 8 guys that he and his team are looking at 26 if they stay with the 26th pick. So really, that's a big group. I think that's a pretty reasonable group looking about who's going to be there for you at 26. I don't think anybody jumps off at you at as a clear favorite. I think that it's all relative on what happens 25 picks before you. So, and Ballard, the way he looks at this draft, I don't think he looks at it as heavy as he did last year's draft. He thinks that there's a lot of defensive talent, but he thinks that outside of the top 15, that around pick 15 to 70 are guys that are more on the same level of skill set. So he thinks that, you're not getting as much value at 15 as maybe you would have last year. But even though I still think that your top 30 guys in this draft, so especially there at 26, you're going to get somebody of value that's going to come in and be a starter for you. Depending on what Ballard and his team wants to do, there's going to be a person of value there at the 26th pick. So I think that the talk about trading back to get more picks, yeah, you could maybe think about doing that, but if it were me, and my opinion on it, I think that a player there is going to be there at 26 unless he has some belief that they're not going to be. And you roll with that. You roll with your 9 picks. That's a good amount looking at around the draft and how many picks that other teams have. I think you look at your 9 picks and you're set with them. That's in my opinion. He's done a lot more research and he knows what he wants a lot more than I do, obviously. So, no, speaking for him is at this point is a little bit impossible, actually. but looking at what Ballard, another thing he said, and I thought was interesting when asked about the need for wide receiver and pass rush coming into the draft, if it's so much of a glaring need after adding Devin Funchess and Justin Houston. This is what he said. No, 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 not as much. That's the benefit of being able to get Devin and Justin because they added to groups that we thought needed to add to. And I think that takes a little pressure off you on the draft when you're not forced to take a position. I've said multiple times, if you have a need and you don't fill it now, it's not the end of the world. We have time. I promise you there's time. There are still free agents that are left out on the street. We still have cut down day. There are evaluations that go on. It does not necessarily have to be right now during the draft. I think that's why you have to take the best player you can that is available. And when you look at what he says there, that's why I definitely don't think that there's any reason why Ballard is going to pick a wide receiver first round in the draft. It's not going to happen. And as many mock drafts around the league are given A.J. Brown to the Colts at 26, it's not going to happen. And as much as I even think that A.J. Brown or N'Keal Harry or some of the other receivers could come in and be really good for you, you already have a giant wide receiver room, and Ballard believes in these guys. And to me, looking at it and with, and being objective, now that you throw that out the window. Pass rush, I still think is a need because Justin Houston is not going to be your long-term answer. So pass rush is, in my opinion, still something that you're looking at. And if you can, you're not going to get that premier pass rusher at 26, obviously, and if you were able to, then you would have, obviously, that would have been your glaring number one pick. But that's about really what what Ballard said in the draft. He's not going to say a whole lot leading into it. He doesn't want to give out anything, but we'll see on Thursday, what happens and what him and his team have spent 17 hours studying, and there's a reason for whoever they're going to pick, or if they trade back or if they trade up, whatever. I think your safe bet is that that they stay with the 26th pick. That's what I will be hoping that they do. And so I think that looking at that gives you kind of an insight a little bit to what to expect on Thursday night when the Colts number is called. So five guys, I want to lay out five guys that I like with the 26th pick. I've had a lot of people disagree with me on these, but that's not going to affect what I think about it. And five guys I've really done a lot of research in and would make a lot of sense at 26, looking about who would be available in there for you. You're obviously not going to have your premier pass rusher, or I would say go with that, because that to me is still probably your glaring need, even after adding Justin Houston. And you have some younger guys on your team that I think your Teray and Tyquan Lewis, those guys can still build here in their second season with Colts. But five guys I like. Number one, if I could pick someone that realistically I think could have a shot being there at the Colts, it would be Christian Wilkins. I've already talked about him plenty on this podcast. He is your most complete player, I think, that would be there for you and would be just a all-around great player and a starter from the beginning, I really think. And you look at his leadership and what he did there at Clemson and his career numbers, I just think that he would be your answer of the future there at the defensive tackle position. If you could get Christian Wilkins, that would make me very happy there at the 26th pick. Another one, Jerry Tillery. This is a familiar name that has come and visited the Colts and at the Colts facility, and who I think probably is definitely on the one of eight players that Ballard is considering there at the 26th pick. It's a safe pick. It's one that you look at what he did at Notre Dame and you look at his body size. I think he could come in and probably be that starter for you on the defensive line like your Christian Wilkins. I don't think he's as good as Christian Wilkins, and he had 5 less sacks than him last season. So Wilkins over Tillery, but Tillery is another guy who I will think will be there at 26 and would be a safe bet, and who I would still be happy with too. The third guy, Jonathan Abram, he's kind of rising more and more as we look at the draft coming here. He's the safety from Mississippi State. A lot of people say he's the best safety in the draft. I think that looking at him and the other safety here that I'll talk about in just a minute, that you look at them and they are probably your best safeties in the draft. They're your most complete safeties in the draft, and the safeties who I really think the Colts are looking for that box safety. So Jonathan Abram did play more your box safety. He played coverage, but he can come in and be that box safety next to Malik Hooker. I've already said this a lot on this podcast, but Jonathan Abram, I do like that pick. He had a lot of tackles for Mississippi State. He did see a lot of high-flying offense and spread offense, what you see in the NFL. So I think that coming in and being next to Malik Hooker, and this is all predicated, this is the big asterisk, if Ballard does not want to bring back Clayton Gathers after his 1-year deal this year, then that's why I think that you would spend that high of a pick with the 26. Without that, that doesn't make as much sense. Obviously, getting a player that wouldn't fill a position because you have Clayton Geathers, who you want to bring back on a 3-year deal. I don't think that's really going to happen. I think that if Ballard wanted to bring back Gathers on a big deal, he would have. But I think that this 1-year deal is a prove it for Gathers. Ballard is obviously high on Gathers, so I think that you don't overlook that. But looking at what's available there at 26, you have running backs, you have wide receivers, you have corners. Well, to me, safety is more of a need than running back, wide receiver, corner. So getting a safety with the 26th pick like Jonathan Abram makes sense to me. Another guy there, and this is more of the 34th pick, but I'm going to merge it in here, is a name that is a little lesser known. I think an underrated guy, Cleveland Farrell. I talked about him in the last podcast. He's an edge rusher from Clemson, was alongside with Christian Wilkins, had 12 sacks in his final year, and had, I believe, 9.5 in his junior year, 2017. And he's one of your edge rushers. He's not going to be your your Bosa, or your Josh Allen, but he's going to be there around the 34-ish, 26-ish pick. And if Ballard really thinks that the talent between 15 and 70 are on a similar even playing scale, then maybe he's looking at, a pass rusher and thinking, I could get him with the 26. I think that would be way more of a smart move at the 34th pick, but looking at who's available around there. But I think that's one that Colt fans should look into. I think look at his tape. That's a guy that is not really thrown around at the Colts a lot, and I don't really think that the Colts really have any connections with him. That's another reason why I'm not so high on him. He didn't go and visit the Colts. That doesn't say a whole lot, but they could have met behind the scenes and we don't know about it. But Cleveland Farrell, look around the 34th-ish pick, maybe 26 if they're feeling crazy, and look at him. He's an edge rusher from Clemson. And probably your fifth player that I like at the 26th pick, and people said they disagreed with, was Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, the safety from Florida. And looking at the tape and looking at the numbers, the case can maybe be made that Jonathan Abram is a better overall safety. I really like both of them. Looking at both of their college film and what they did at their respective universities, I think these guys could come in and really step in and be a playmaker on the team. I really do. They both can tackle well. They both can play coverage. They are both inclined to go and help stop the run, which I think the Colts are kind of shifting more to as a run stopping team. As unbelievable as that sounds, and as unbelievable as that would have sounded 4 or 5 years ago, but I think that they're making the moves that way, and a safety like Gardner Johnson or Abram would make a lot of sense to me. Some of you won't agree with that, and that's fine, but that's my opinion. Two guys that I like there, looking about who's available. Guys that I didn't add that I've talked about before maybe, and that are kind of around the 26th pick and who I see in mock drafts. Dexter Lawrence. This was a guy that I kind of liked early on, about a month ago. With the 26th pick, I think he's fallen down a little bit. You look at his stats, and they just weren't as gaudy as some of the others. I think that Tillery is more of a complete player, who I compared those two a lot early on, about a month ago. So that I didn't add him. I think that if maybe you do go with another position besides the defensive line at 26, maybe he would be there at 34th for you to snag there. So maybe that's one that you could look at 34th. A guy I was high on a few weeks ago, and who I still really like as a player, but I don't think that the Colts have any chance of drafting, and that's Byron Murphy, the corner from Washington. And you look at his film, and I really think him and Greedy Williams are probably your two best corners in the draft. Looking at what they did, and they're both falling around the 26th pick, and I do like Byron Murphy a lot, but it doesn't make a whole lot of sense for the Colts to get a corner there at 26 or even 34. You have your four corners on your team who are young and developing, so that one doesn't make as much sense getting closer to the draft. One that I've seen a lot, and Colts fans have asked about looking on Twitter, and who I've seen fall to the Colts in some mock drafts, is Josh Jacobs, running back. That's stupid. I think I won't even listen to that one, honestly. The Colts don't need a running back first pick. Probably should draft one in the draft, kind of, what you've done the past couple years, but you're not getting Josh Jacobs with the 26th pick. That is, he's a good player, but I think that looking at the Colts, it's, you really are high on Marlon Mack, but you also believe in that offensive line, and you can plug and chug somebody, and they're going to give you 3 yards a carry, 4 yards a carry behind that line. So, but that's just me. And the other one that I didn't add, AJ Brown, who the national media would already claim is on the Colts roster at this point. I've seen him in so many mock drafts. No, I don't think he's going there. I don't think there's any chance at 26. And the other guy, N'Keal Harry, even at 34th, looking at what Ballard has done, what he says, to me, it makes a lot of sense there at 34th, but for Ballard and looking at it objectively, I don't think there's much of a chance that N'Keal Harry or AJ Brown could fall to the Colts at 26 or 34th. I think that they'll probably be available there, but Ballard will look elsewhere and probably snag a wide receiver third, fourth round ish. I've mentioned that I like Paris Campbell from Ohio State there with the 59th pick, but he's another guy that could go early second round. So, looking around the league, there's a lot of different things that you could do, but it's all depending on what happens on draft day. So that's really all I want to get into today, and I want to see what happens on Thursday night. Is Ballard gonna do the safe pick and get your Tillery, or hopefully Christian Wilkins? That's what I'm hoping for. Or is he going to go with something a little unorthodox? Is he going to go with the safety? Is he going to go with the offensive lineman? Is he going to trade back and get more picks? At the end of his presser, he said, "I'll see you guys on Thursday," or maybe not, implying that there's a possibility that he could trade back to the second round on Friday, get more picks. I still don't think, to me, if you ask me, if that's not the way that I would go. I still trust Ballard. He is one of your better GMs in the league, so I think that him and his team's decision on it should come with a lot of merit. So, but I think that staying with the 26th pick, that's what I wanted to lay out today, and go into a little bit of way too early predictions for the Colts, and looking at their schedule and who they're playing. Play some tough games. More of a tough schedule this year than last year, but not impossible, and not something that you look at and you're like, oh my gosh, we're not gonna win 10 games. No, I think you can definitely win 10 games, and hopefully get 12 or so. That would be most ideal, but that's all I wanted to talk about today. I'm going to come back with a podcast on Friday, breaking down hopefully the first pick there at 26. Super excited to watch that tomorrow. It's going to be fun to get together with friends and count down to the Colts and seeing what everybody else around the league does. I mean, you've heard so many different rumors about if the Arizona Cardinals are going to pick Kyler Murray or not. I still think that they'll probably end up with Kyler Murray. It's just kind of a match made in heaven there with Cliff Kingsbury. So, looking at that, the top 10 picks are really going to be fun, man. And I'm excited to see what happens. And I'm really excited to see what the Colts are going to do, because I think that this is going to be really their year where, if not a Super Bowl run, AFC Championship should definitely be on their mind, and something that is within reach for this team as they have continued to build under new general manager Chris Ballard and new coach Frank Reich. And that's all I wanted to talk about today. I appreciate you guys listening and supporting the Indianapolis Colts podcast, as I want to keep making more of these leading into the 2019 season. And it's fun. It's fun to break it down. So I appreciate you listening. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and like the video. That does help me out as I continue to grow this channel. So thanks so much, and have a great draft night. I hope you guys get together with friends and have a few drinks and enjoy what the NFL is going to bring, as all eyes will be on the draft board as what is going to happen. So thank you so much for listening today, and I'll be back later this week with a draft analysis. All right.